A desperate single mom asked for a ride. She didn't know the driver was a millionaire. CEO. She was a desperate single mom, soaked in rain, clutching her child, begging a stranger for a ride. He was a cold, silent millionaire with a past. He refused to speak of one night, one storm, one decision that would change everything. What started as a reluctant act of kindness became a story of healing, redemption, and the quiet, powerful rebirth of love. But when the past catches up and threatens to shatter it, all will they run, or finally choose to stay. You won't believe how this emotional roller coaster unfolds. Watch until the end. You'll never forget it. Before we begin the story, leave a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our latest stories. Enjoy the story. The storm came in like a warning, fast and unrelenting. Wind screamed between the buildings, bending trees to their roots, while cold rain lashed against the streets like sheets of needles. In the heart of the chaos, headlights sliced through the downpour, illuminating puddles and cracked sidewalks. Inside the sleek black SUV, Logan Bennett sat silently, his face half lit by the city's flickering glow. He didn't flinch at the storm outside. His own internal storm had been far louder for months now. Logan was a man who built empires. In boardrooms and in battles of acquisition, he never flinched. But tonight, the solitude of his success pressed in harder than usual. His phone buzzed with unread messages, financial projections, pending mergers, a dinner invitation. He hadn't answered. His driver turned down a narrow residential street when the brakes suddenly slammed, jolting Logan forward. "What's going on?" he asked sharply. "There's someone in the road, sir." Through the streaked windshield, Logan saw her drenched from head to toe hair, plastered to her face, her arms wrapped around a small child. She stood in defiance of the storm, shielding the boy with her own body, desperation in every inch of her frame. The driver cracked the window rain spraying in. "Ma'am, you can't stand there. It's dangerous. Please." The woman begged, her voice raw and shaking. "Just a few blocks. My son, he's freezing. We've got nowhere to go." The driver glanced into the rearview mirror, waiting for Logan to wave them on to keep driving like they always did. But Logan didn't speak. He stared, her face beneath the mud, and rain held something that cut through him. Not pity, not helplessness, just a silent kind of strength, the kind you only earn when you've had everything taken from you, and you're still standing. Then without a word, Logan reached forward and opened the door. "Get in." The woman hesitated. "What?" I said, "Get in now." She didn't wait to ask again. She opened the door, climbed in, holding the boy close. Both of them, soaked and shivering. Logan motioned for the driver to go. No more questions. Inside the warmth of the car, the silence was heavy. The boy clung to her, burying his face in her shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered, voice nearly inaudible. "Where are you headed?" "Nowhere, anywhere safe." Logan glanced at her again, really looked. Her arms were bruised, her shoes didn't match. The boy was wrapped in a thin jacket, at least 2 sizes too small. She hadn't been walking for long, but it was clear she'd been running for much longer. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rachel," she answered softly. "Rachel Carter. And this is Eli." "Logan," he said, offering a faint nod. Logan Bennett. The driver turned another corner, nearing Logan's private estate. The gates loomed ahead, framed by trees that whipped in the wind. Without thinking too much about it, Logan made a decision he couldn't yet explain. "You're coming with me." Rachel's eyes widened. What? There's a guest house safe. Warm you, and your son can stay there tonight. Longer if you need. She opened her mouth to object, but nothing came. Instead, she nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Thank you. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Just make sure he's warm. The car stopped in front of the guest house. Logan stepped out, first grabbing an umbrella and offering it above her and Eli. He led them inside, turning on lights, pointing out the stocked kitchen, the clean linens. He didn't offer explanations or rules, just space safety. Rachel looked around the small home, disbelief, painting her face. Eli clung to her side, wide-eyed but calm. She turned to Logan. No one's ever done something like this for us. Logan's voice was quiet. Maybe they should have. He turned to leave, but before he could step out into the storm again, he felt a tiny hand tug at his coat. Thank you, Mr. Eli whispered. Logan paused, looked down, and something unfamiliar passed over his face. Something he hadn't felt in a very long time. You're welcome, Eli. He stepped out into the rain, closing the door behind him. But inside, behind that door, something had already changed. A story had begun, one he never intended to write. And trust me, it only gets better from here. If this opening stirred something in you, subscribe now and don't miss the next chapters of this deeply moving journey between three strangers who just might save each other in ways no one expected. Part 2 is coming, and it will break your heart open in the best way. The rain had stopped by dawn, but the gray clouds still clung low in the sky, casting a soft, heavy silence across the Bennett estate. Inside the guest house, warmth seeped into Rachel's bones. For the first time in weeks, she hadn't truly slept. Every creak of the floor, every unfamiliar shadow made her tense, but Eli, curled beside her on the small sofa, slept deeply safe, finally in a place that didn't tremble with fear. She sat upright, her back, aching eyes fixed on the delicate movements of her son's chest rising and falling. She'd lost count of how many nights they'd spent in shelters or curled on public benches. The ache in her body was constant, but it was the ache in her spirit that wore her thin. And yet, this morning felt different. The danger was still out there, but for this moment she wasn't running. Logan returned earlier than expected. He stood in the guest house doorway, coffee in hand, dressed in clean lines and quiet power, the kind that didn't need to be announced. Rachel flinched at first, still not used to any man's presence, without fear rising in her throat. But Logan didn't step inside. He just stood there, giving her space. I figure you'd be up, he said, voice low. She nodded. It's hard to sleep when your life still feels like it might disappear any second. He didn't smile, just tilted his head a little and said, would you consider staying a little longer? Rachel straightened. I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be. The house is large. The staff could use some help. And Eli, he looks like he could use a garden to run in. And a routine that doesn't begin with panic. She looked away, torn between gratitude and the urge to retreat. You don't even know me. I let you into my car, he said with a small shrug. The rest isn't that big of a leap. Something in his tone, steady, unforced, eased her. She gave a slow nod. Okay, if you're sure. I can cook clean, whatever you need. I need someone who won't burn the kitchen down, he said, then paused. And someone who won't let the quiet turn into loneliness. That last part hung in the air. And so Rachel stayed. She woke early, helping the housekeeper with breakfast prep, folding napkins, with care scrubbing the marble counters until they shone. Eli adjusted quickly. The grounds became his playground. The garden, the hallways, even the kitchen where he'd sit watching her knead bread, asking endless questions about flour and dough. Rachel kept her distance from Logan. She was always polite, always professional, but never familiar. She didn't knock on his office door unless summoned. She never lingered in the halls. And yet, Logan noticed everything. The way she always stacked the dishes precisely, the way she paused by the window before drawing the curtains as if listening to the outside world before letting it back in, the way she bent over Eli's shoes each morning, tying the laces slowly, carefully, like she was giving him armor for the day. He found himself watching her more than he meant to. Once he passed by the kitchen and saw her twirling with Eli, his tiny feet on hers, both of them giggling in the golden morning light. Another time, he caught her humming as she dusted the library shelves, her fingers lingering over the spines of old books, like they were friends she hadn't seen in years. And then came the night that shifted something. Logan couldn't sleep. The mansion felt too quiet, too polished, too hollow. So he went to the kitchen for tea. But when he opened the door, he stopped. Rachel was there, seated on the floor, with her back against a cabinet, cradling Eli in her lap. They were both asleep, her hand still holding a half-folded cloth napkin, the boy's face tucked into her chest. The light above the stove cast a soft glow over them, and for the first time in years, Logan felt something deep and aching in his chest. A tenderness he hadn't let himself feel. He stepped forward quietly and adjusted the blanket over Eli's legs. His hand brushed against Rachel's. Her eyes opened. Their gazes locked. "I didn't mean to fall asleep here," she whispered. "He had a nightmare, and It's all right," Logan said. Softly, "This room's warm." "Makes sense." She smiled faintly. "I'll take him back." He hesitated. "Leave him, for now. Just rest." And then he turned, heading back into the silence of the main house. But something had changed. A line had been crossed, not of boundaries, but of understanding. The house didn't feel quite as hollow anymore. And in the rooms, where loss had echoed for years, the first hum of life had begun to return. The next part of their story unfolds with a moment neither of them saw coming. Stay tuned for part 3, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. The days began to blend into a rhythm neither Logan nor Rachel expected, but both somehow needed. The mansion, once cold in its quiet perfection, now carried the echo of life again, of footsteps, soft laughter, and the occasional sound of a child's toy clattering to the floor. Rachel found purpose in the routine. She made the beds, with corners so sharp you could cut paper. She folded towels in sets of 3, sorted the pantry by expiration dates, and planted basil and thyme in little clay pots outside the kitchen window. Each act was a quiet reclaiming of control, of dignity, of life that didn't revolve around escape. Logan watched from a distance as if studying something he didn't quite know how to name. She moved through the halls like someone trying not to disturb the peace, but slowly becoming part of it. The staff warmed to her quickly. The housekeeper. Maria spoke of her gently, always with a hint of admiration. "She's not just surviving," Maria said. "Once, she's rebuilding." It wasn't just Rachel. Eli, too, had begun to thrive. The boy who once clung to his mother now ran barefoot across the garden paths, laughing, collecting pine cones, and whispering to ants. He loved the tall oak by the back wall, called it the climbing tree, even though no one let him climb it. Logan had a bench moved nearby, so Rachel could sit while Eli played. She never asked for it, but he noticed she used it every day. They rarely spoke of anything personal, but slowly, stories began to surface. Over cups of chamomile tea or short exchanges, while setting the table, Rachel would mention things. Her favorite movie growing up. The time she stole a library book because she didn't want to return it. The name of the dog she had when she was 6. Logan listened, not because he had to, but because it grounded him in a way boardrooms and quarterly earnings never could. He told her things too, how he once dreamt of becoming a writer, how he hated champagne but drank it at every event, because that's what people expected, how he'd once spent an entire weekend rebuilding a watch just to avoid attending a family wedding. One afternoon, Logan found Eli sitting in his office coloring on a pad of sticky notes with a red crayon. "Hey, buddy," he said gently. "What are you working on?" Eli held up the paper proudly. "It's a house with a sun and a big tree. And that's you. And that's Mommy. And that's me." Logan blinked at the picture. 3 figures holding hands in front of what looked suspiciously like his own estate. "That's a really nice drawing," Logan said, throat tight. "Is this our house?" Eli nodded. "It's happy here." Later that evening, Rachel found the drawing tucked carefully into a glass frame on Logan's bookshelf. She didn't say anything about it, but her fingers lingered on the frame a second longer than necessary, and her eyes shimmered with something unspoken. But not everything was soft. One evening, Rachel was rearranging books in the study while Eli napped. She reached up for a high shelf and accidentally knocked over a wooden box. It clattered to the floor, splitting open, spilling letters tied with a worn ribbon and a photograph that slid across the floor. She bent to pick it up. It was a black and white picture. 2 people, a woman and a man, smiling on a beach. Logan's parents. She didn't hear him enter. "Put that down," he said sharply. His voice was cold, controlled, but his face was not. She froze. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." I said, "Put it down." Rachel set the photo back in the box and backed away. Logan crossed the room and shut the lid with a quiet finality. For a moment, the air between them was thick with something neither could name. "I wasn't snooping," she whispered. "I know he said softer now. It's just, I don't open that box." She hesitated. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." The word cut the air cleanly. Rachel nodded, "Okay." But as she walked out of the study, Logan looked down at the photograph again. His fingers brushed the ribbon. For the first time in years, he considered that maybe one day he might want to talk. Maybe not now, but soon. And that night, as Rachel checked on Eli and then stood for a long time looking out the window at the dark, quiet estate, she understood something. Healing didn't arrive like thunder. It came slowly, like footsteps down a long hallway, quiet and persistent, until suddenly you weren't afraid to turn on the light. The rain came unexpectedly that Thursday afternoon, sweeping across the hills like a quiet storm. Long overdue, Logan sat in the study, absent-mindedly stirring a cup of coffee he wasn't drinking. He hadn't heard Rachel come in until her voice, low but firm, broke the silence. There was a man at the gate. He looked up, alarm flickering through his expression. What man? Her arms were folded tightly across her chest. Her voice held a tension he hadn't heard in weeks. He asked for me by name. The housekeeper said he was rough, impatient. Security sent him away before I saw him. Logan stood, every muscle suddenly alert. You think it's him? Rachel didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. I know it is. That night, the quiet returned, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the peace they had slowly built, but the kind that creeps in when you're waiting for something to break. Rachel didn't sleep. She paced the guest house after Eli had drifted off her eyes, darting toward the windows every time the wind pushed against the glass. Logan sat alone in the main house, staring at the security monitor, watching the grainy footage on a loop. The stranger's face, the angry gestures, the way he leaned too close to the gate camera. By morning, Rachel was gone. No note. No suitcase, just vanished. Panic wasn't something Logan Morgan felt often. But when he found the guest house empty and Eli's little shoes still by the door, it hit him like a punch to the chest. The staff hadn't seen her leave. The security system hadn't recorded her departure. But tucked under the flower pot on the guest house porch was an envelope sealed and silent. He opened it with shaking hands. Oh, I can't put you or Eli in danger. I had to go. Please don't look for me. I'll be okay. Thank you for everything. Rachel? By the time Logan finished reading, he was already walking toward the main house, barking orders into his phone. He wanted surveillance footage pulled, wanted the man's face identified, wanted every bus station, shelter, and rental agency within 100 miles checked. But more than that, he wanted Rachel safe. Because this wasn't just a guest who had left. She had become something else. Something he hadn't dared name yet. Something he didn't want to lose. For days, Logan worked with quiet fury. His tech team traced ATM withdrawals made with a card she had used weeks ago. A private investigator found a gas station clerk who remembered seeing a woman and child fitting Rachel and Eli's description. The trail was faint, but it was there. Then one cold evening, as dusk pressed against the sky, Logan found them, a rundown diner near the state line. The windows fogged from the inside, the smell of fried food clinging to the air. And through the window, there she was, Rachel. Her back was turned, hair tied in a messy knot. She carried a tray with practiced grace, her movements quick but careful. In the corner booth, Eli was coloring on a napkin, a half-empty milkshake beside him. Logan stepped inside. The bell above the door jingled softly. She didn't see him at first. Then she turned. The tray slipped from her hands and clattered onto the counter. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Her face was pale lips, slightly parted. Logan, he didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at her. Rachel's eyes darted toward Eli, who had now seen Logan too, and was smiling brightly. Mr. Logan. Logan finally stepped forward. His voice came low, controlled. You ran. I had to, she whispered. No, he said you chose to. That's not the same. Her eyes welled. I was scared he found us. I found you too. Rachel shook her head. It's not your job to fix my life. I'm not trying to fix it, Logan said. I'm trying to be in it. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she whispered, Why? Because I care, because Eli matters, because you matter. And because when you walked away, you took something with you. I didn't know I needed until it was gone. For a second, neither of them spoke. The diner hummed around them. Then Logan reached into his coat and pulled out a small drawing. Eli's drawing. The one of their house three figures, holding hands. He laid it on the counter. Rachel looked down, tears falling now, silent and sudden. I brought your home back, Logan said, if you'll let me. And finally, Rachel stepped into his arms, letting herself be held, not because she was fragile, but because for once she didn't have to carry it all alone. The days after Rachel and Eli returned to Logan's estate felt different, though not in ways anyone could easily explain. There was no grand welcome, no celebratory meal or stream of questions, just a gentle unfolding, like a house once filled with tension, slowly exhaling room by room. Rachel no longer stayed in the guest house Logan had arranged for a suite in the East Wing, once used for visiting family, now quietly prepared with fresh linens, soft lighting, and a hand-painted sign on the bedroom door that simply read, Eli's Space. No one mentioned who painted it, but Rachel found a few specks of blue on Logan's shirt the next morning. They fell back into rhythm, though it wasn't the same rhythm as before. It was deeper, steadier. The spaces between them felt filled now, not empty. Rachel still moved through the house with the same quiet grace cleaning when she didn't need to organizing drawers. No one asked her to, but now she did it with presence, not distance. She allowed herself to laugh, to lean into moments, to sit longer at the breakfast table, just to watch the steam curl from her mug. Eli blossomed. No longer just the polite, watchful boy, he now ran barefoot across the garden, chased butterflies, and filled the halls with joyful noise. One afternoon, Logan walked into the living room to find Eli asleep on the couch, a blanket half falling off a picture book, open on his chest. Rachel was nearby, curled up in the armchair, her eyes closed in rest, but her hand still slightly extended toward her son. Like even in sleep, she was reaching for him. Logan stood there for a long time, not saying anything, just watching. There was a softness in Rachel that hadn't been there before, not because she had changed, but because she had stopped hiding. And Logan had changed too. He wasn't pacing the halls late at night anymore, haunted by deadlines or shadows of his past. He had learned to sit still, to be present in the silences, to find meaning, not in conquest, but in connection. They spoke more now, about real things. One evening, they were sitting on the back patio, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves overhead. Eli had gone to bed early, after insisting on a second helping of roasted potatoes, and leaving his toy dinosaur lined up perfectly on the windowsill. Rachel cradled a cup of mint tea Logan had poured it himself. "You ever think we would end up like this?" he asked, glancing sideways at her. Rachel chuckled, the sound soft and rich. "No, I thought I'd be running forever, or invisible somewhere, just getting by." And now she looked out at the garden. Fireflies blinked faintly in the dusk. Now, I'm not afraid of tomorrow anymore. Logan turned fully toward her. "You don't have to be not here." Rachel studied him for a moment. "Do you remember the first night we met?" "Of course I do. I wasn't sure if you were helping out of kindness or guilt." Logan didn't flinch. "It was neither. At first, maybe I was just doing what seemed right. But then I realized you and Eli weren't just people passing through my life. You were what it had been waiting for." Rachel blinked fast. Then she said, "I've been waiting a long time to feel safe." "Logan, I forgot what it looked like. Or how it feels." He reached over and took her hand. Not urgently, not to claim, just to hold. "Then let me keep showing you." The moon rose higher. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken understanding, like the way a room feels when music has just faded and no one wants to speak first. Later that night, Rachel walked into Eli's room and found him fast asleep, his arms wrapped around a stuffed bear that hadn't been there the day before. She picked it up gently and found a note tucked beneath the ribbon tied around its neck. For the bravest explorer I know, welcome home. It wasn't signed, but she knew. Down the hall, Logan sat at his desk, the lamp casting a low glow across the plans for a new wing. One, designed specifically for children in need. It wasn't a business proposal. It wasn't a PR move. It was a seed planted by the presence of one small boy and one fierce mother. Because some homes aren't built with walls. They're built with moments and patience and hands willing to hold even the most fragile things. And in that quiet stretch of night, Logan finally allowed himself to believe maybe this wasn't the life he had planned, but it was the one he was always meant to find. The scent of cinnamon and rosemary lingered in the air. One quiet Saturday morning, as Rachel prepared breakfast with Eli humming beside her, the routine had grown familiar now, a shared rhythm of peace and purpose. Outside, the sky was soft and gray, hinting at spring rain. Logan was in the study, reviewing architectural layouts for the Children's Center project they had begun discussing. Everything felt settled until the knock at the door. It wasn't urgent, not loud, just two quiet taps that echoed with unsettling clarity in the still morning. Rachel dried her hands, exchanging a glance with Eli before stepping toward the front entrance. She opened it cautiously. A man stood there, lean eyes darting rain clinging to his coat. His clothes were worn. His presence felt immediately wrong. She didn't speak. "Rachel," the man said, "you look good." Her spine straightened instinctively. "You need to leave. You're not going to invite me in. You shouldn't be here." Logan heard her voice from the hallway and appeared behind her, his eyes scanning the man with practiced calm. "Is there a problem?" The stranger's mouth twitched into a grin. "Depends you, the new man." Rachel stepped between them. "Logan, this is someone I used to know." Logan didn't move, but something behind his eyes shifted. "I came to see my son," the man said, gaze slipping past Rachel into the house. "You don't have a son here," she replied. His voice hardened. "He's mine, and you know it." Rachel's breath caught. "You lost that right the day you raised your hand to us." Eli had wandered toward the hallway, now confusion on his face. "Mom." Rachel turned quickly, her voice steady. "Go back to the kitchen. Baby, I'll be there in a minute." The man took a step forward. Logan's voice sliced through the air, sharp, cold. "Don't." The man hesitated. Logan stepped beside Rachel. "You're trespassing. I suggest you leave before I call security or the police." The stranger laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think money can keep her safe? You don't know what she's running from." Logan's voice didn't waver. "She's not running anymore." Rachel's hand trembled just slightly. "You've said what you came to say. Now leave." He looked at her again, something dark in his eyes. "I'll be back," he said softly. "You can't hide forever." When the door closed, Rachel stood motionless for a moment before she slumped against it. Logan caught her before she hit the floor. She didn't cry, but he felt the shudder in her shoulders. That night she didn't eat. Logan sat outside her room waiting. When she finally emerged, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, she said only one word: "Sorry." For what he asked standing, for bringing danger here. He shook his head. "You didn't bring it. It followed you. There's a difference." She looked at him, eyes searching. "What if he tries to take Eli?" "He won't," Logan said. "Not again. Not while I'm here. Later, While Rachel tucked Eli into bed, Logan watched the monitors in his security office. He had already doubled patrols, reviewed gate footage, and instructed the guards not to hesitate should the man return. But more than that, he had placed a call to someone with more reach than the local police. By morning, a private investigator had already been assigned. Rachel didn't ask questions, but she noticed the change. New locks, new cameras, staff moving with more purpose. She saw Logan watching Eli more closely, walking slower beside them in the garden, never letting his phone stray far from his side. And she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. He didn't just want to protect them. He was ready to fight for them. Not from obligation, from love. The days that followed moved with quiet resolution. Rachel didn't ask for updates, but Logan gave them anyway. The private investigator had tracked down enough evidence threatening texts, footage from the gate, statements from the staff. Legal action moved faster than she expected. A restraining order was filed. Police involvement escalated. And within 2 weeks, the man who once haunted every corner of her fear was arrested and charged. It wasn't revenge, she felt. It was release. The air around the estate changed. Lighter. Somehow, doors stayed unlocked longer. Eli's laughter rang louder in the halls. No longer cautious, no longer shadowed. Rachel breathed deeper, smiled more easily, her steps slower, deliberate as though the very act of living no longer required armor. But something deeper had shifted too between her and Logan. It wasn't spoken aloud. There was no dramatic confession, no candlelit moment of revelation. It was found in the quiet places when Logan stood beside her at the sink, drying dishes without a word. When his hand would briefly rest at the small of her back as they passed in the hallway. When Eli reached for both of them, at the same time as though instinctively understanding they now belonged to the same story. One evening, Logan asked her to walk with him. The sun was low, casting long golden lines across the lake. The water glimmered with reflections serene and wide, like the future Eli ran ahead with a wooden toy boat, letting it drift just close enough to the shore. Rachel and Logan moved slower, their pace in sync. When they reached the quiet curve where Logan had once opened up to her about his parents, he stopped. Rachel turned to face him, her brow furrowed slightly. Why do I feel like this isn't just a walk? Logan didn't speak at first. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rachel froze. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a band of gold, with a delicate etching of olive branches circling its edge. Logan met her gaze. I've spent a long time building things, he said. Buildings, teams, deals. But I never built a life. Not one that meant anything. He paused, his voice softening. Until Eli. Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, but she didn't speak. I don't want to protect you anymore, Logan continued. I want to walk beside you, not behind, not ahead, with you. Every step. He held out the ring. Rachel, I don't just love you. I trust you with my heart, my home, my future. Will you marry me? Her breath hitched 1,000 memories flashing through her mind. Stormy nights, scarred mornings, laughter. She never thought she'd earn again. And this man, steady, flawed, extraordinary, offering her something she never believed she deserved permanence. Yes, she whispered, voice shaking. Yes, I will. Logan smiled, slipping the ring onto her finger, his hands as steady as his promise. From the distance, Eli's voice cut through the evening air. Did Mom say yes? Rachel turned, Laughing, I did. Eli ran back, hugging both of them tightly as if they'd always been his. And perhaps in some way they had. The wedding was quiet. Lanterns swayed gently in the garden breeze. Only those who mattered were invited. Logan's oldest friend, Rachel's few trusted confidants, and the staff who had long become family. Rachel wore a gown she had sewn herself, delicate embroidery tracing her sleeves, and a tiny bluebird stitched beneath the hem. Logan waited for her at the end of the aisle. Eli by his side, bow tie, crooked cheeks flushed with pride. Their vows were simple, handwritten. "I promise to stay," Logan said, "to show up, to love you in every ordinary morning, in every quiet evening without condition." Rachel smiled through tears. "I promise to stop running, to believe again, to give you every piece of me, even the ones I once thought were too broken." And then came Eli standing on a small stool, reading from a crayon-colored card. "Now we're a team, Mom, Logan and me. That's family." That night, under soft garden lights and stars scattered like blessings, they danced. No spotlight, no spectacle. Just three hearts that had once wandered through storms, now beating together in the quiet, extraordinary peace of having found home. In the story of Rachel Carter and Logan Bennett, we witness the extraordinary journey of two people whose lives collided under the weight of storms, both literal and emotional. Rachel, a single mother, carrying the trauma of an abusive past, had no intention of being rescued. She only wanted shelter for her son Eli and a chance to breathe again. Logan, a successful, yet emotionally distant CEO, had built his world with precision and control. But it was empty, echoing with the absence of something real. When a chance encounter on a rain-drenched night brought them together, neither could have predicted how deeply they would change each other's lives. Their story wasn't one of sudden romance or perfect timing. It was built in the quiet moments, folding laundry together, sharing tea in silence, comforting a child after nightmares. Through every simple act, trust began to take root. Logan didn't save Rachel. He made space for her to feel safe again, and Rachel didn't fill a void in Logan. She opened a door he had long kept shut. Together, they redefined what family meant, not a title or tradition, but a daily choice to show up, to listen, to be present. The most powerful moments weren't grand gestures, but the raw, unfiltered ones. When Rachel stood her ground in the face of fear, when Logan admitted the pain he'd buried, when Eli, without needing words, began to treat both of them as his anchors. In their quiet resilience, they taught us that healing doesn't come with perfection. It comes with presence. And that love isn't the absence of brokenness, but the willingness to stand with someone in theirs. What can we learn from Rachel and Logan's journey? First, that kindness can be life-saving. A simple act offering someone a ride, listening without judgment, leaving space for healing can change the trajectory of a life. Second, that people are not defined by their pasts. Rachel could have stayed hidden in fear, but she chose to trust. Logan could have kept his walls up, but he chose to open his heart. Their courage reminds us that vulnerability is not weakness. It is strength in its truest form. In today's fast-paced, often cynical world, we are constantly told to guard ourselves, to stay detached to avoid risk. But stories like Rachel and Logan's call us back to the truth that the greatest beauty often lies in the quietest moments, and that love, real love, doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a borrowed sweater, a folded napkin, or a child's drawing tucked inside a coat pocket. Now we'd love to hear from you. What part of Rachel and Logan's story moved you the most? What did you take away from their journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to create a space where kindness, hope, and healing are part of the conversation. And if you want more stories that stir the heart and remind us all of what truly matters, please consider subscribing to this channel. Your support helps us continue to bring powerful, emotional stories to life. Let's keep sharing the moments that make us believe again.